Welcome back to the 4A Baseball Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We're hopping to the middle of the Central, the middle of the mid. And we've got the Twins and the White Sox here today. Sevs likes that one. We got the Twins and the White Sox today. And these are two teams that just like fell off the face of the earth last season. They are the reason it's called the AL mid, because they were really mid. And last year, we're going to kick it off with the Minnesota Mid Twins, the Minnesota Twins. They went 78 and 84, best for third in the AL Mid. They held the division for I think like 4 months this season, and they just fell off the face of a cliff. But they did get Sonny Gray, so that's cool.
I mean,
Oh yeah, how are you guys doing?
oh yeah, we're doing pretty good. It's good you're checking it out. I'm just kidding. I mean, I think these two teams are, a good talking point. I mean, they were very disappointing last year, but at the same time, there's a lot that happened in the offseason for both these teams, and there's a lot of speculation around both of these teams. There's not necessarily like what we're talking about, like Yankees, Blue Jays, but this is two teams that could, surprise some people. Steps, how we doing?
I mean, I'm not gonna say extremely high, but I really like this Twins team. I think they are much improved from what they were last year. And they did go out and get their guy back after he signed with two other teams, but we'll talk about him in a little bit. I'm not as high on the White Sox. I definitely think they need a culture shift, and I think this is going to be more of a building season more than anything else, and kind of a bridge season to get them where they want to be next season.
See, which you're talking the Twins or the White Sox?
White Sox was the second
Okay.
one.
Yeah, I think when we get to them, it's just going to be like it's a failed rebuild in my eyes. But the Twins, like it kind of seemed like they were entering a rebuild, and then they weren't, and then they were, and now they're trying to compete. And I'm just lost. Like they've got like 5-2 starters, and it's just I don't know about this Twins team.
I mean, I'd rather have 5-2 starters than one ace and a bunch of fives, right? So that's what I mean. That just might be me. Tom, are you
I
on my
mean,
side?
no, I'm on your side on this one. I think,
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of upside in this rotation. But there's so much that could go wrong with this team. There's a lot of injury history in this rotation, especially in this rotation.
Do you want me to go over let's go over their offseason moves. So, I mean, they currently have three guys that are still free agents and could possibly come back to them. They got Chris Archer, Gary Sanchez, and Miguel Sano. Michael Fulmer, he goes to the Cubs though, and they end up trading Gio Urshela to the Angels in exchange for Brent Hedrick. So I mean, as far as out goes, not everyone's gone yet. So I don't really think they're gonna go after and get Gary Sanchez. I mean, Chris Archer could be a decent piece, and Miguel Sano's kind of old at this point. So I don't know. But on the inside, they end up re-signing Carlos Correa to a 6-year, $200 million deal. Room for 10 years on that contract. After he, with the what was it? It was his leg. It was
His
a leg
shin.
injury.
Yeah.
His shin. After that shin injury that popped up with the Giants and then popped up again with the Mets, he ends up coming back to where I believe he actually did want to end up playing. Overall, they acquire Kyle Farmer from the Reds for Casey Legumina. I butchered that. I apologize.
The
But they also
Lagoons.
get Christian Vasquez, top 10 catcher, on a 3-year, $30 million deal. Sign Joey Gallo to a 1-year, $11 million deal. Acquire Michael A. Taylor from the Royals for Steven Cruz. I love Michael A. Taylor. He looks like Michael Jackson. Extend Chris Paddock to a 3-year, $12.525 million deal. And then they send out their AL batting title champion in exchange for Pablo Lopez, Jose Salas, and Byron Chiriot. Then they signed Tom's favorite player of all time, Donovan Solano, to a 1-year, $2 million deal. So a lot of improvement, in my opinion, for this Minnesota Twins team. I mean, top to bottom, I think this was a great offseason.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they love pitching. They really love pitching. I mean, you gave up the batting champ for some pitching. But now you got a pretty solid starting rotation. I'll walk us through it right now. We got Pablo Lopez at the number 1, Sonny Gray at number 2, Joe Ryan at the 3 spot, Tyler Mahle at the 4, and then Kenta Maeda at the 5. We got Chris Paddock right now, but he will probably slot in somewhere in this rotation. These are all, like Brad mentioned, 2 guys. They all have some upside though. I mean, I have a case for every one of these guys on why they could be, blossoming into stars in the future.
Yeah, and like the Pablo Lopez trade, like he was supposed to be the trade for a guy and prospects. Like somehow the Twins fleeced the Marlins. They got prospects and Pablo Lopez for a guy. And like, yes, losing Luis Arraez hurts, but like you just got a very good pitcher when he's healthy. Like Pablo Lopez is a 2 when he's healthy. So is Sonny Gray. And Joe Ryan actually is ceiling for an ace. Tyler Mahle, he's good when he's healthy. He's a 2. Kenta Maeda, he's a 2 when he's healthy. Like if you're catching my drift, but like I don't dislike the starting rotation in terms of its ceiling. Like in terms of its ceiling, it's a top 5 in baseball in all honesty, but it's just injuries.
Yeah. I mean, the Minnesota Twins are always kind of those teams, one of those teams I feel kind of like just like fade out and you just kind of like forget they exist. But like I'm actually excited to watch the Minnesota Twins play because yeah, a bunch of 2 starters kind of is mid, right? But it's also gonna be fun to watch these 5 guys, 6 guys if when Paddock comes back, maybe slot one of them over to the bullpen or whatever they want to do there. But it's gonna be fun to watch these guys. Like Paddock just got his extension. He can hopefully turn into something in Minnesota, like not like he could in San Diego. And all these guys top to bottom, I like them all, and I want to watch them pitch. Tom, do you have any other points for the rotation?
I mean, I think Pablo Lopez also has the potential to become a star. I like a one guy. Despite not pitching as many innings in 2020 and 2021, he was very good percentiles wise in both those years. And going into 2022, he was great up until about halfway through the season. He had a very bad second half. So, I mean, this is the first time we actually saw this high volume on him too. But I think just because he had a bad second half of the season does not make him like any worse. I think he'll be more of a first half guy next year. Brad, go ahead.
Brad?
I can see them going to a 6-man. I think it'd be
I would like
beneficial for
that.
an injury prone rotation. Once Paddock's back, I think it could really help. Because especially if Paddock's out for like the first what's his injury?
I'm not sure.
Is it TJ? I think it's TJ again. So maybe he won't be back this season.
Oh God, really?
Yeah. I'm pulling it
Is
up
it-
real quick. It
Is it
might
the
be
research
TJ.
going? Research team going
Jake
up.
Cavalli.
Oh, yep. It goes quick. Chris Paddock, injury, Tommy John surgery. He is out for the season, folks. Never mind. Okay, Chris Paddock is done for the season. He has Tommy John surgery. So it looks like they're going to be sticking with the 5-man rotation. But they also have Simeon Woods Richardson who can come up. They've got there's one kid that's just been around forever in their system. Blanking on the name. Isn't it like Balkovich or something like that? Does that name ring a bell to anyone?
Pitchers. I mean, the top pitcher. None of their. Hold on, let me look at.
We're
Let me
looking
order
for
it by
balls.
ETA. Their
Jordan
top.
Balkovich.
Yeah, there he is. He's right here.
Yeah, apparently he's actually
He's
not
got
that
quite
good
the.
anymore.
He's got quite the mustache.
No, I'm game.
I'm rocking with it. I mean,
They also got Bailey
last
Ober in the
season,
pen.
he did not look very good last season.
No, he did not. They also got Bailey Ober though,
No,
who
he
they
didn't.
could utilize.
I mean, they got 3. I mean, they're 8, 10. Within their top 10, 2 of them are starting pitchers. Simeon Woods Richardson and Louis Varland. Both of them are expected this season. But let's get into their bullpens. They got Jorge Lopez, Johan Duran, Griffin Jacks, Caleb Tealbar, Emilio Pagan, Jorge Alcala, Giovanni Moran, and Randy Dobnak.
The Uber driver.
What do we feel about this bullpen?
I mean, they definitely loaded up on the depth. I mean, I think John Duran is going to be like one of the best, if not the best, next year. We saw that flash last year. Went out and got Jorge Lopez last year. Not quite the pitcher they traded for, but he could turn into that guy. I could easily see Duran becoming that closer to one though this season. And there's some more guys, Brad. You want to talk about the other guys in this bullpen?
Oh, I was gonna say I really like Jorge Lopez. Like even during the World Baseball Classic, he let up a couple run, but the hardest hit ball was 75 miles an hour off the bat. Like that's what he was in the Orioles. He wasn't an insane strikeout guy, but he was just the master of weak contact. And he's been doing it already this season. I think that's solid. Griffin Jacks has shown ceiling. Not too familiar with the bottom of that bullpen, Jorge Alcala, Giovanni Moran. Randy Dobnak had a solid 2020 campaign, but he really hasn't been able to get anything past that. Emilio Pagan somehow hasn't gotten himself DFA'd yet. Like that's a weak point in that bullpen that I could see easily getting replaced by Bailey Ober. Yeah, it's a certainly a bullpen.
Yeah,
It is. I think outside of injuries, I would say this is probably their weakest point. Would you agree?
um, I would say yes, just because their lineup has a lot of upside, but they do have very high injury chance.
That is
So
true.
I don't know if that's necessarily their best and their worst.
I would say that their offensive depth is probably their
Yeah.
weakest
I
spot.
like that. I mean, coming Donovan Solano off your bench probably isn't the best. But let's talk about their lineup now we're talking about it. So Byron Buxton, he's gonna be their center fielder, assuming he's healthy. Carlos Correa at shortstop, Jorge Polanco's at second, Max Kepler in right, Jose Miranda at third base, Joey Gallo in left, Christian Vasquez behind the dish, Alex Kirilloff at first base, and you got Michael A. Taylor at DH slash outfield. I don't like him as a DH because I would rather his glove be out there, but I know you have to take into account Byron Buxton is a better better at both sides of the ball. But Michael A. Taylor, it was an interesting trade to go get him, but I think it'll work well for them because Byron Buxton is so injury prone.
So
Um,
the thing is with the two of them, right? Buxton's listed as the DH on Fangraphs, and I was like, no. So that's why I put him as the primary center fielder. But there is a whole thing like playing center field is the reason why he gets hurt so much. But if they wanted to keep him healthy, you basically have to be like no diving until you get to the postseason, which is going to hurt some of his defensive value. But he's still really quick. And you could put Michael A. Taylor there, but you lose Buxton in center field. But Michael A. Taylor is not really an effective DH.
Yeah.
So you have that whole issue there. Obviously, you could put Royce Lewis at DH for when he's healthy. Then the issue is with Buxton injured over the past since 2017. That's 6 seasons, I think. The Twins have a negative outs above average in center field. This is including Buxton being healthy. So since 2017, the Minnesota Twins have a negative outs above average in center field. But they also have Byron Buxton, who's like a plus 70.
Yeah.
So you can do the math there.
That just says more
Not
about his
good.
injuries.
Yeah.
That just says more about his
Um,
time on the field.
I mean, could you slot him at a corner outfield spot? Would that
Why?
be outrageous? I mean, because it could be helpful to not have to cover so much ground. In
The thing
center,
is,
right?
if you do that, like you're not going to put Kepler or Gallo in center field, which basically means you have to have
No, you
Taylor.
put Michael A. Taylor in center and put like Gallo at DH.
In what happens when Royce Lewis is back.
I mean, you adjust then, but I'm saying like as the
Awkward.
roster looks right now, that's just kind of an idea I'm throwing out there.
Yeah, that's
As
not
the
horrible.
roster as that lineup is right now, for me, I would want Gallo at DH, slot Buxton into a corner outfield spot, and then Michael A. Taylor in center field.
Thing is, Gallo's actually a fairly decent defender.
Yeah,
That's fair.
he's got a very good arm too.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe Kepler. But Kepler, his defense hasn't been great, or neither was his bat last year. Gallo had a bit of a down defensive season last year, but I think he just had everything down last year. So I'm not going to criticize his defense based on his 2021. But Max Kepler, I'm just pulling it up just so I have the number in front of me. I believe his defense is worse than Gallo. So if you wanted to go with that whole thing, you could slide. Oh, never mind. Max Kepler was just 11 outs above average last year.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I
no.
mean, I definitely don't think defense is the issue here. It's just a matter of where you're gonna slot everybody, especially with Royce Lewis out. Another name that's also has Gilberto Celestino. Both of those guys are out with injuries.
Gilberto.
Yeah. I mean, Max Kepler is just so weird in the sense that, I mean, this is a 30-year-old guy that should be in his prime, and his percentiles say that he is, but his on the field
Not.
stats are just not. I don't understand.
Yeah.
How can you bat 227 and be in the top like 85th percentile in everything? I don't understand. He's like, this looks like what on the surface would be one of the best right fielders in the game, but he's not. So I mean, could this be some positive regression, Brad? You think anything for the next season?
With an
Breakdown time?
89.6% shift ratio, he had a 191 WOBA. Without the shift, he had a 314. This is a positive regression without the shift.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a scary 1 through 5. I mean, look at the 1 through 5 in this lineup. This is I like this 1 through 5. This is one of the better ones in the league, actually.
I mean,
It's solid.
it is, and if Gallo can come out and be some semblance of what he was on the Rangers, then that adds a sixth. Christian Vasquez is a top 10 catcher in baseball. So he's gonna come out and he's gonna do his thing. And Michael A. Taylor's just clutch. He'll come up in a big scenario and kind of get you a hit. Their bench though consists of Ryan Jeffers, Kyle Farmer, Donovan Solano, and Nick Gordon. One lefty off the bench.
That's fine.
I wouldn't say like the depth is horrible. 'Cause I think Kyle Farmer and Donovan Solano both have like a decent hit tool. Like they're not very good in the field, but they're not that bad. And Brad, you hating on us?
No, it's
But-
just Kyle Farmer.
Yeah, I mean,
Kyle
Kyle
Farmer's
Farmer-
not that good.
Kyle Farmer in 2021 was put together a decent season, about league average. Last year a little bit below. So hoping to see some progression there. Donovan Solano's been a bench guy his whole career. I mean, on the Giants, he was, a platoon bat, because that's what we did. But he's got a good hit tool. I think he'll be a guy that can slot in pretty decently in this lineup.
It's fine. It's
Oh.
okay.
Okay.
As far as prospect central goes, really only had Royce Lewis to talk about. I think we kind of talked about everything. You guys want to touch on him anymore, or?
He played 12 games last year. He was good in those 12 games. Then he hurt his knee.
Yeah,
Now he's not
ACL.
playing right now.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Good
That's
recap.
Thank you.
When's he supposed to come back from that injury?
Middle of the season, like a month or two.
Okay. All right. So you guys want to get into our projections?
Sure.
go
Okay,
ahead and
I'll
lead us
kick
off.
it off.
Yeah.
What? Standings wise, record wise, I have them going 82 and 80. That is much better than they were last year, above 500. MVP Carlos Correa. Cy Young, I have as Joe Ryan. I think he has the most upside in that starting rotation. Most important, I have Byron Buxton. He is sensational when he is on the field, but he's just not on the field. Breakout, I have Royce Lewis. When he does come back from that injury, again around mid-season, I think he's going to play very, very well at whatever position they do slot him at. And I think he's going to do an incredible job across the board.
I'm a little higher on them, just a little bit, and I'm not saying that by much. I have them going 84 and 78. I feel like that's a little bit higher to their ceiling. But this is a team that can be pretty scrappy. I have their team MVP being Carlos Correa. I feel like he's going to play the most games for them, other than the guys that are not as good. Most important player has to be Byron Buxton. I mean, he's been like that pivotal guy in this lineup, who does not play that often. If you can get a full season from Byron Buxton, I don't see how you don't win 84 games, and I don't think that's a hot take. Cy Young, I had Pablo Lopez. I feel like we will see that first half version. If that didn't make sense earlier, I meant that he had a really bad second half of the season, and I feel like I don't know how to explain it. He's just gonna be good the whole season instead of just half a season. As for their breakout, it's between two guys. It's between a re-breakout of Max Kepler or Jose Miranda. And I think Jose Miranda is probably more of a guy that's going to break out next year. I think he's been having a decent spring training, a lot of power showing. And I think he's a guy that could kind of, ball out this season. Brad, where are you at?
I'm exactly at 500. I'm at 81 and 81. It's a good baseball team, but it's just like, I don't know. I'm not overwhelmed on any side of the ball. I think that there's a lot of injury risk with that starting rotation. It's good. It's not better than the Orioles. It's not better than those. I think we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. Like when I write my records, I look at other teams and I'm like, all right, is this team better than that team? And you'll hear about it in a couple episodes. I was like, is the Twins better than the Angels? And I was like, very slightly better. And I was like, all right. And does that put them above or below the Orioles or a team? It's just you're comparing them to other teams. And I think they're very similar to the Diamondbacks and a little bit worse than the Giants, which puts them at 81 and 81. For their MVP, I went with Jorge Polanco. I don't know how healthy that Carlos Correa is going to be. I don't know how healthy Byron Buxton's going to be. So Jorge Polanco is kind of like the third best guy on that team. So he gets the award for Brad. For their Cy Young and breakout, I put Joe Ryan. I think he develops a second pitch besides his really good fastball, and that makes him super effective. And he breaks out into like a low threes, high twos ERA, throws 180 innings, strikes out a lot of guys because he's got a really good deceptive fastball. He needs a second piece there, and I hope he developed it. And the most important, since you guys said Buxton, I'll say Correa. They're both correct. Like they both need to be healthy for this team. It's just the Twins need Correa's injuries to not kick in right now. They need it to be a couple years down the line.
That's fair.
I think when it comes to volatility, I think a team that has a high injury risk also has a high volatility. But this is also a team with not as high as a ceiling as other teams. So I think this puts them like a medium volatility. Does that make sense for you guys? Yeah, so I
medium
mean,
high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is a team that could probably win like 86 games. I mean, they could probably sneak in the playoffs, win the division. But they're also a team that could finish with like 75 wins, 74 wins.
I agree with that. I think that feasibly speaking, all three of the top three teams in the Central could win the Central. Like I think the
Yeah.
Guardians are the favorite to win it by far. But the White Sox and Twins both have a convincing argument where if the Guardians falter a little bit and those two teams like succeed, they hit all their strides, they could win the division. Because I don't think it's going to take a 95 win season to win the AL Central.
No, not at all. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I think as far as the floor though, I think around like I would say 78 games, what they were last year, I would say would be their floor.
I'd drop it a little bit below that because
I don't know.
you could reasonably foresee this being the exact same team as last year.
Yeah. I would say their offseason moves, boost them a little bit. So I think their floor is, right about 75.
I would say their 25th percentile is where they were last year.
Yeah.
But like their 75th percentile is kind of where Tom is, around 84 wins, where their max
Yeah.
is like 87, 88 wins.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So I guess by what they've constructed would be considered a success.
Yeah, I think they're strange, like I wouldn't say reverse rebuild like teams like the Rangers, but I think this is a team that kind of like didn't want to commit to anything, but they are making moves that aren't as bad as other teams. I think this is kind of like a successful, unsuccessful rebuild because I feel like they're going to threaten the AL Central, and I feel like that's their goal, and they're going to succeed at that, I think.
Right. So do you agree with like an 87 win ceiling?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Again, I like this team. I guess I wasn't as high on it as Tom was, but I think they're gonna go out and they're gonna shock a lot of people, I think.
All right. So with that, you've heard about the Minnesota Twins. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back to talk about the Chicago White Sox.